What's up, Notre Dame fans? Patrick Engel here at the JMA Dome in Syracuse, joined by my colleague at blueandgold.com, Tyler Horka, after Notre Dame's 41-24 win over the Orange. Irish are on a two-game win streak and are 5-3 with a top five team coming to town next weekend in Clemson. Let's discuss this, and certainly not what either of us expected given our predictions before the game, but I don't think anything maybe that was too surprising, at least not for me. I don't want to speak for you here, Tyler, in terms of result, but definitely not surprising in terms of how Notre Dame tried to get this done. And that was just run the ball over and over again, for better or worse. And I think today, above all days, even though the run identity isn't really anything new, I think just kind of showed what exactly Notre Dame's roadmap is and what it kind of has to be given what's not really there in the passing game. That was my biggest takeaway from it of here's the blueprint, here's what worked, and this is what they're just going to have to roll with for the rest of the year. What do you think? What was your main kind of, if you had to, the simplest distillation of this thing as you're watching it?
Well, throughout that first half, at least, and definitely when it kind of got close in the second half, I was thinking, man, how big was that Brandon Joseph pick six on the very first play of the game? We're sitting here talking through 7 games of the Notre Dame season about how Notre Dame has only forced 3 turnovers and they're one of the worst teams in the country at forcing turnovers. You wanted one? Well, you got one on the very first play of the game. That was huge. Like I said, the game got close there in the second half. Syracuse whittled the score down to, I think it was 24-17. And you're sitting there thinking, whoa, I mean, this thing's getting out of hand because the JMA Dome was rocking. Patrick, you're there. You can attest to that. It sounded loud on TV. But at the end of the day, Notre Dame made a couple big plays. I think the interception where Howard Cross tipped the ball and it kind of floated into the arms of an outstretched Maris Liufau. That was an awesome play. Notre Dame outscored Syracuse from that point forward 17-7. And how did they do it? They leaned on Audric Estime there in the second half. He ends up carrying the ball 20 times for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game directly after he fumbled and only ran 3 times for 17 yards against UNLV. Marcus Freeman said they were going to have all the trust in the world in him. They displayed that today. Logan Diggs also got the ball 20 times, a little less efficient, 85 yards, but he also scored a touchdown. So I just wrote about it in the blueandgold.com report card. You don't need all 3 of those heads in the 3-headed monster to churn out yards. Chris Tyree only goes 8 times for 23 yards today. When 2 of those guys are working as effectively as Estime and Diggs were today, you said it, Patrick, that's the identity of this Notre Dame football team, because I'll let you talk about Drew Pine a little bit today and what you saw. It was another sub 50% passing effort for him, 9 of 19, 116 yards, a touchdown, and an interception where he forced the ball in to Michael Mayer. How many times have we seen that this season? So it was one of those games where Notre Dame did a lot of things that Notre Dame fans have been shaking their head at and like screaming into a pillow about, like, why is this happening? Notre Dame only has 362 yards of offense, but when the defense is playing as well as it was today, and you're taking the ball away and you get another punt block and you're running the ball as effectively as Notre Dame was, you can win ball games like that against teams that are ranked in the top 25 and had previously only lost 1 game all year.
You mentioned Pine. Like, I think now that we've kind of seen 3 straight 50 or sub 50% completion games here, like, I think you kind of see what he is or isn't, and just in terms of like, if you're gonna win with him back there, and right now I don't know that Notre Dame really has another choice, you're gonna need to be able to run the ball in volume and efficiency as Notre Dame did. Maybe not 53 carries worth of volume, or 53 carries when you get rid of the kneel downs and the sacks, but a high volume, at least 40, right? You need to run it at good enough efficiency, 4.7 yards a carry when you get rid of the sacks and the kneel downs. And you're going to need to play good enough defense and get takeaways. And we saw all of those. And it is a lot of like things that kind of have to go right to make Notre Dame work overall with the passing offense it has, or really doesn't have. But we kind of saw most of those hit today, or at least enough to deliver a 3-score win here. And whether that's going to happen throughout the rest of the year here and the rest of the 4 games and probably 5 games when you think about a bowl, anyone's guess, really. And certainly the next team up there is one that will certainly test their ability to do that, probably more so than anyone left on the schedule. But yeah, I think you saw some of the the vacillations with what Pine has been, even in this game. He hits that great throw to Deion Colsey on that little rollout. Very next play is that interception where it's, you've got three guys kind of underneath Mayer and another one over the top. Like, maybe not an impossible throw, but I'm not sure one that Pine is going to make a whole lot. And really, you see that and think, oh, man, look at the crowd around Mayer. There's probably somebody else that doesn't really have a whole lot of guys around him. But then what does he do when he comes back from that? The next play, hits that sideline shot to Mayer, play action touchdown to Jaden Thomas. So enough, good on him in the sense of like, that I think really could have gotten to him, but I think we've seen Drew Pine bounce back enough. And if nothing else, even if some of the ups and downs are going to be there, and maybe this is closer to just what he's going to be, you really need him to bring that kind of, not unflinching kind of attitude there, and be able to, if there is a mistake, put it behind him like he did, and not have it kind of spiral. We've heard Michael Mayer talk about, like, yeah, sometimes we do have to pick up his confidence. Notre Dame and Mayer and the rest of Pine's Notre Dame teammates going to have to be really consistently helping him with that throughout the rest of the year. So not perfect in the sense, and certainly really, I'll take it a step further, flawed when you look at the offensive operation, but enough to beat a team that had lost once all year in a pretty loud atmosphere here. First time in always be the Carrier Dome. It was pretty pulsing here, especially right before Maris Liufau got that interception that I thought really turned the game around.
Yeah, that was I'm going to write about it too at blueandgold.com. The play of the game for me, and I think you would agree, was that interception, because everything was going Syracuse way at that point. I mentioned the run that they used to cut a 24-7 deficit into a 24-17 deficit. I mean, at that point, you're thinking they're going to tie this thing up. And they had that juice of a backup quarterback, right? You bring a guy in, he makes a couple throws in Carlos Del Rio Wilson, and he's throwing the ball downfield with pretty good accuracy. And you're like, oh man, this is what Garrett Schrader wasn't doing in the first half, if we want to stick on the theme of quarterback play, because I think that really defined the first half. It's not like Notre Dame did anything tremendous offensively in that first half. You take away the Brandon Joseph pick six, and it's a 14-7 ball game at the half. And you're sitting there thinking, oh man, this is ugly football. Neither of these teams are moving the ball. But I think that's a testament to what Notre Dame was doing defensively. They made a guy in Garrett Schrader who looked very operational in the first 7 games of Syracuse's season, looked very comfortable back there, a guy that's able to beat you with his arms and able to beat you with his legs. I'm looking here at the box score. He was 5 of 14 for 35 yards with the touchdown and the interception on the first play of the game. And a guy that really likes to use his legs, almost had 400 yards rushing in the first 7 games of the season, ran 2 times for 2 yards in an entire half of football. So I went into this game really worried for Notre Dame that they weren't going to be able to stop Garrett Schrader, not just on some of the designed runs, which I thought it was interesting that Syracuse didn't really dial anything up for him specifically in the running game, but he dropped back to pass quite a few times, 14 passing attempts in one half, and there were never really those rushing lanes that a guy like Garrett Schrader could use to eat up a defense. So credit to Notre Dame on that front. I thought they played really well defensively all game. Again, Del Rio Wilson came in and hit some of those throws, but you limit a guy to like Sean Tucker to 16 carries for 60 yards. That'll do. That's a guy that was averaging almost 100 yards a game. So just from a defensive perspective, when you talk about everything that you just talked about with Drew Pine, Patrick, when those things are going not Notre Dame's way, if they're able to get some things to go defensively their way, they're able to win football games like this.
Yeah, and that's kind of the power of takeaways, right? Where they're on your heels a little bit in that third quarter with Carlos Del Rio Wilson in the game for Syracuse and kind of giving you what you thought Garrett Schrader might present to Notre Dame's defense. But then, you get that one play that impacts the game in the manner that it did, instead of just trying to not bend, and not even I think that's kind of been what Notre Dame's defense was without those takeaways and with its red zone struggles. It's hard to bend it because they don't let a lot of people down there or aren't giving up, 400 something yards, but just not a whole lot of those impact plays. And you saw those today with the takeaways, and almost 3 if not for an offsides, and really kind of surprised it wasn't 4 considering how good a grip they appeared to have on that muff punt. But I think it'd be remiss not to mention special teams. Speaking of that muff, I talked about earlier, of everything that kind of has to hit for Notre Dame to win, or at least win by 17, with a passing offense that's not particularly consistent or particularly explosive. special teams is part of that. And right now we're seeing something that's really influencing games. And this is 2 games in a row where Notre Dame's getting big plays on special teams, splashy plays, or just affecting it. Like Syracuse's first several punts, like Notre Dame didn't get that block until late. But just given how short some of those punts were, it's almost like, you kind of picture like, okay, did Syracuse's punter watch film of what Notre Dame's punt block unit did last week and just have nightmares? So he's just thinking, get it off. And then you have a worse kick. And that's exactly what Brian Mason wants to do on every punt, even if they're not getting a hand on it. So another thing that, like, I think Notre Dame has realized, like, it can really count on and has to count on, and really has a weapon here in what its special teams are able to do. And another one with a lot of touchbacks from Zach Yoakum, with one of the exceptions being where they had to kick from the 20 after a penalty. But being able to limit opponents in the return game, being able to create those havoc plays on punt return, and very, very nearly had a muff punt recovery in their grasp there. So another thing I think you're really going to need to show up in the last quarter of this season, especially next week.
Yeah, and that's the last thing I'll say about this game is a lot of times when you've got a guy like Clarence Lewis just breaking free and easily blocking, it was another easy punt block for Notre Dame. That's going to end up being the play of the game, especially when it sets up a 2-yard touchdown rush for Audric Estime that puts the game away. I mean, you go up 38-17 right there with about half a quarter remaining. That's it. Notre Dame wins the ball game at that point. That's generally going to be your play of the game, but to me, it wasn't today, because we talk about that interception that completely turned the tide and flipped the momentum back into Notre Dame's favor. So again, like you said, Patrick, when you have an offense that you're not particularly comfortable in every time it goes out there, if a team stops Notre Dame's rushing attack, chances are Notre Dame's offense is going to come off the field because it can't pass the ball proficiently. When you're able to do those other things, the punt block, the INTs, the INT return for a touchdown, you feel a whole lot better about your football team. And for the first time in a while, I mean, this is the first time since BYU probably about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, where Notre Dame leaves a game saying, you know what, I feel a little bit better about this football team. We're not great. We can't throw the ball all around the field, and that's what college football is in this era, but we got a pretty good defense, and we got a special teams unit that's going to go after people. And so there's 3 phases in the game, and Notre Dame has been pretty good at 2 of them pretty much all season.
Yeah, and that's I think today you saw just what it is for better or worse. And I think today, on the better end of it, can't promise that it won't make you want to scream into pillows or just start downing Labatt Blues here, which I guess Syracuse is apparently a huge Labatt Blue town, as I see in this suite I'm in here. But you saw the roadmap, and now it's just a matter of how well Notre Dame can execute it and get it to be as consistently there over the last third of the season here. So for Tyler Horka, I'm Patrick Engel of blueandgold.com, signing off after Notre Dame's 41-24 win at Syracuse.